Hello and welcome to another episode of the Life After Cardiac Arrest podcast with me, your host, Paul Swindell. Today I'm joined by cardiac arrest survivor Ingrid Gardner. Welcome, Ingrid.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, yeah. It's special. It's the 7th of October today, but yesterday was a very special anniversary for you, wasn't it?
It was my third rebirth day yesterday, and I spent the day with all of my family and some of my friends, eating cake and drinking coffee. We had a lovely day, nice and chilled out, but just what the doctor ordered, is like touching base with all the friends and family. So yeah, had a lovely day, thank you.
That's great. Do you feel like you're normalising your anniversaries now, not having to go out and do anything special and shout about it?
Yes and no. A few weeks ago, I thought, right, I'm going to organise it and have a big party and, have a big celebration. I treat it as my normal birthday, but that never came about and I couldn't be bothered in the end. So it was coffee and cake. But I think as time has gone on, it still does feel like a special day, and I think it needs some sort of recognition, but I'm just going to wing it from now on and see how I feel at the time. And if it ends up being a big party, it ends up being a big party. If it ends up being coffee and cake, then that's fine too.
It sounds a good plan.
Yeah.
Well, you did sort of celebrate it in one way by posting a really lovely blog post into the group, and I shared that out onto the website as well, onto the wider world, because I thought it had some real great sentiments behind it. Could you tell me a little bit what your reasoning behind writing it and some of your thoughts about it?
Well, the main reason is and that I put it on the group as well, it was just to try and inspire and reassure newer survivors that are sort of very new in their recovery, well, and ones that are sort of fairly well into their recovery, because I just want others to know that it's not all doom and gloom, and as rotten as you might be feeling, actually it's all quite a normal path to follow, and that it does get better and you can get back to being you and having fun and having some sort of normality back in your life with a new you. It's taken me 3 years to get there and to be comfortable with who I am again, but I'm liking the new me. So yeah, if it helps and inspires others, then I've done what I set out to do, because it is a tough place to be when you're in your recovery, as you well know.
Absolutely, especially the early days when it's all very new to you and there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainties all around it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I used my birthday yesterday is just sort of to reflect how far I've come and what I've achieved in those 3 years, and just to be really grateful that I've got a second chance, and that I don't have to let what happened to me define me, but I can live alongside it and be the new me and enjoy the new me.
No, it was, as I said, some great sentiments in there. And you touched on a couple of things which I wanted to bring up in this podcast, because we're just a week or so after the big event, the Not Alone event. Yeah. And you mentioned about going to meetups. And I just thought perhaps we could talk about your sort of journeys of going to various meetups and what you've gained from them and your thoughts about them. I mean, yeah. Can you remember the first event that you went to of a cardiac arrest survivor?
Yeah, I found SCA UK sort of fairly early in my recovery, and then I became aware of a SADS conference in London. I think it was November. I'm sure it's November 2017. I took my mum and my sister along. I bought tickets and we went, and I found it really, really beneficial. And I'd only ever had sort of social media interaction with other survivors at that point, and it took an enormous amount of courage and physical effort, because I was still sort of quite fatigued at the time, to sort of get on the train and go to London. It was, it's not an easy journey from here. It's a couple of hours, and that with the physical issues as well as the emotional ones, it was quite a tough journey to make. But once I got there and I sort of heard the speakers and interacted with one or two of the other survivors at coffee time and stuff, I felt like I'd found some family. I felt like I had, it was a really strange feeling, because even though you were all complete strangers, it felt like that all of a sudden made a new family, and we'd all got something in common that had brought us all together. And I sort of say I've made some unlikely friends, because generally some of the friends that I have made I wouldn't have come across in my day-to-day life before SCA. I found the day enormously emotional, and physically, and as well as mentally. And I got on the train, and it's sort of burst into tears, and I think I cried all the way home. And it weren't unhappy tears; it was just having been overwhelmed by the emotions and meeting other people who just understood what had happened to me and could completely relate to me. The second event I went to was in Birmingham, just less than a year later. And that was a big one for me, because that was completely on my own. I got on the train from here, and it's an hour's journey. And
so whereabouts are you?
I'm in Rutland, where the event was last weekend. So to get on the train to Birmingham, it's about an hour.
And the previous one in London, how far away was that? So how far did you travel for that?
It's a half an hour car journey, and then about an hour and 10 minutes on the train. And then obviously we had to get to the destination in London. So both of them for me were massive things to do, because I'm quite shy, although people are disagreeing with me on that one. I'm quite shy and nervous, and to get on a train on my own, it was just unheard of. Before I had my SCA, I just would never have. It would have been well out of my comfort zone. I wouldn't have done it without somebody else with me. But now I don't sort of think twice about it. I've sort of got a newfound inner confidence that I've got to get up and go kind of attitude now with it.
So the first one in London probably took you a couple of hours to get to, but you were with some other people. And I just sort of bringing that up so that other people, if they're thinking about whether they can't go because it's too far to travel, would you say that it was worth those 2 hours of sort of nervous journey?
Oh, absolutely. And every meetup or event that I've been to since, it's always worth the travel. I don't really care how far it is. I don't have a big budget to spend on these events and journeys and things, but for me, meeting other survivors and their families and all the doctors and everybody that are at these events, for me, the benefits are immeasurable, from meeting other survivors, from meeting people who get it, who understand. Because it's like I said in my blog yesterday, until you go and meet these other survivors, it's a really, really lonely place to be. Because nobody kind of understands it from your point of view. Family have got their own trauma and they're dealing with it in their own way. But they've got each other to discuss it with and to talk things over. But you as the survivor have got no one. So for me, going to these things, it's just, it's heartwarming, and it makes me feel not alone. And it's definitely something I would recommend every time. It's not for everybody, and some people, deal with their recovery in their own way, and if they don't want to meet other survivors, that's fine. But for me personally, and I know for a few of the friends that I've made, these events are definitely worth the journey. Definitely worth the journey. I'd travel to the other end of the country if I had to. I nearly have sometimes, I think, to various things. It feels like it anyway.
So you're saying the next one you went on your own to Birmingham?
Yeah, I got on the train to Birmingham. There was about a dozen of us there, I think, from what I can remember. And again, this is something, I met more new survivors and their loved ones. And again, massive challenge for me to get there. With the anxiety and the nervousness and even the emotional worry. But once I'd got there, it was like I would gone home. I was welcomed with open arms from one of the other survivors that met me at the station eventually, because we got lost. And even that sort of like it became part of the adventure for me. And went to the meeting. We were there sort of a good few hours, all afternoon, and I think I left sort of about 8:00 in the evening to get the train home. And again, somebody came to the train station with me and made sure that I'd got on the train okay, and because I was on my own and I was really nervous. But when I was sat on the train on the way home, having had a wonderful afternoon chatting and swapping stories with the other survivors and their families, I just sort of sat and reflected. And I felt so much more confident and at ease with my emotions. And again, it was knowing that other people were there that got it and understood it, and that I didn't feel that I was on my own in my recovery. And it was a magical day, again, meeting everybody. And it's something that I still hold dear in my heart now, because it was life-changing for me, that meeting those people that day. It was at that point that I, on the train on the way home, that I realised that I'd got a new confidence and that I was going to be okay, and that it wasn't all as bad as it at first seemed in those early days. So, yeah, really good positive outcome for me.
That's brilliant. And Gareth had to take some credit in that, because he organised the Birmingham meetup back then, I think. So
he did, and it was him that came and met me at the station as well. So, and I'd seen him in London the year before, so it was nice to see a familiar face. And and I was worried that I wouldn't recognise him, but he'd got his T-shirt on, his SCA UK T-shirt. So I did recognise him straight away, thankfully, because I thought, oh God, my memory might be terrible and I might not remember him, but I did, and it was just lovely to see him again. And we've become friends, I think, since then as well. So. Yeah, it was good. Brilliant. Really good. Thanks, Gareth.
And then the next time was probably last summer, was it?
It was the Guinness World Record attempt. And again, that was an amazing day, without even meeting the other survivors and things, because it was a chance to catch up with some of the guys that I'd already met and made friends with, and we'd had interactions over the group and things, and privately. But what an achievement, it's something that I'd never have even dreamed that would happen to me, is to go and set a Guinness World Record. So that in itself was just brilliant. The day itself, with all the activities and workshops and one thing and another that were there, absolutely brilliant, very informative. And I got a lot more from that than I did at the conference the year before, because it was a completely different setup. But again, meeting the other survivors that I'd made friends with, meeting other new survivors who I'd seen quite active on the group, was just phenomenal. And again, I came away from the party and everything afterwards. I came away from that feeling like a whole new person again, and having reached parts of my recovery that I didn't expect. And it was just a really, really lovely, brilliant thing to be able to do, physically, emotionally. It was just amazing. And it was great to be a Guinness World Record holder as well. Which is, so, and just learning the statistics and all this sort of the maths behind survivorship and all that sort of stuff, that's quite phenomenal as well. So to learn, about you and how miraculous your recovery is, as well as then to make friends with all these other little miracles, it's mind-blowing. And I'm really glad that I was able to take part.
That sort of brings us nicely into what happened last week. And you mentioned it earlier about how you didn't feel alone when you went to one of the other meetings, because it's sort of like one big happy family.
Yeah.
And that was the title of last week's event, in your back garden almost, in Not Alone.
Yeah.
And you were partly to blame for it being at that. I won't say blame, actually. I should retract that, because it was absolutely fantastic venue, the Barnsdale Hall Hotel, on the edge of Rutland Water, which, as I mentioned, is sort of you were one of the ideas about coming up to that part of the world.
Yeah. I've used Barnsdale Hall many times. I even worked there as my first Saturday job as a chambermaid, put my teeth back in. And I sort of like looking around the local area when we were looking for venues. I'd sort of made many visits to various places, and it was Barnsdale that sort of really stood out for me. I felt that it got a really good balance of things that we needed for the Not Alone event. It certainly lived up to my expectations, apart from the blinking weather, because it rained all weekend, didn't it? But it's a great venue, and I'm blessed to have it on my back doorstep, and I probably don't use the local area anywhere near as much as I should. But again, it was amazing that it came here, and a successful event was had by all, I think.
Absolutely. One thing you just said there about the countryside or the surrounding area, I think that's one thing that a lot of people were taken by, how beautiful it was around that area. And I think possibly it's a shame, really, that we all tend to sort of zoom past there on the way to perhaps other bigger, well-known areas in the country, like the Peak District or the Lake District of Wales or whatever. It looked like it had quite a lot to offer. So it was a shame that didn't have more days there, really, although a couple of people did opt to stay an extra night, and I think they made good use of that the next day.
Yeah, I know certainly one of the survivors, him and his girlfriend went and saw some of the local sites. I think they went to the local falconry, and one of the gardens that used to be used for Gardener's World on BBC One many years ago. And I remember it as a child being filmed, but I've never actually been there, which is a terrible thing to say, isn't it? But I will now. It was lovely that people sort of gave me a new view of my local area as well, because when you live somewhere, you forget its beauty. You just take it for granted. And, so having that on the doorstep last weekend has opened my eyes again to how wonderful it is here and living here. It's just beautiful, and I'm blessed.
Mm-hmm, you are. And so the event last week, it was a different format to ones that we had previously. So how do you think that worked, in the fact that we had sort of the main auditorium with a number of speakers, myself and Tom. We had Professor Barbara Wilson talking about brain injuries and memory issues, and then Donna Malley talking about fatigue. Then we had lunch, didn't we? I think. And then there was the Anne Jolly, MBE, talking about SADS and their work, followed up with an absolutely amazing personal talk from Charlotte about her experience and the way that she's giving back and doing it for DFib. And that was just, I don't think there was a dry eye in the house that day or at that point.
No, I don't think there was, bless her. She did amazingly well, and I hope that she gained as much out of her speech as what we all did as well, because it was certainly emotional. And I hope that Charlotte's recovery is progressed from last weekend because of the feedback that she's had. Certainly last weekend, from my own personal point of view, I found it really beneficial. Some of the things I'd heard at other events, but there were still snippets of those things that were still relevant. And actually, I did learn new things in some of those speeches. Others, like the fatigue and the memory, big thing for me, both of those. And it was good to hear that I'm not going as crazy as what I thought I was, and it is all absolutely normal in the grand scale of things. The speakers were definitely fantastic, and I gained a lot from that. It was well set up day as far as I'm concerned. There's a couple of timing issues, but that happens wherever you go with whatever you do. That's it's just one of those things, because there's always lots of people that want to gain more information, and why wouldn't you when you're going through this? It was just humbling to know that I was not the only one in that room that had got all these thoughts and feelings and worries and doubts about my recovery. And actually the speakers just sort of confirmed that we are all going through a normal recovery. And for me, it was a great day. Sadly, I had to miss a couple of bits and bobs that I wanted to listen to all the way through because of other bits that I had to go off and do as part of the event team. But I certainly got a lot from the day as a survivor, and I'm really glad that we managed to get it here. And thankfully, it was on my doorstep, and I got the most out of the whole weekend.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's great to hear. I mean, with regards to your you mentioned your memory and fatigue, how have they progressed for you in the last 3 years?
My memory is improved no end. I mean, when I was sort of first coming out of intensive care, my friends nicknamed me Dory, the goldfish, because my memory was as bad as hers. Sort of, I kept repeating myself. I would ask questions all the time because I'd forgotten that I'd asked them. I hadn't got a clue why I was where I was. So short-term memory was just abysmal. My memories of back then are very patchy. If somebody asked me to recall a certain time when I was in hospital, I wouldn't be able to recall it. But if they reminded me, I'd be able to go, oh yes, I remember that, and I could tell them a little bit about it. My memory has improved dramatically, but it's still not brilliant. I'm rubbish at forgetting birthday. I keep forgetting birthdays and appointments, and I'm normally a really organised person and wouldn't ever forget a birthday or an appointment. So I've had to make lots of apologies over the last couple of months, or a couple of years. And the fatigue, it comes and goes. It's a lot better than it ever was. I think it depends how busy I've been and how stressed I am. That they certainly have a factor in it, and with my memory. I find myself sort of saying to my family now, if I've told you this before, just tell me so that I don't repeat to them. And I quite often find myself saying, have I said this to you before? So but I've learned to live with it. I've learned to live with what my memory is. You make adjustments in your own life. I am one for not saying yes to anything until I've had a look at my calendar, because I write everything that I remember on my calendar. And I did get to a point at one point where I was keeping a calendar, a diary, and using the calendar on my phone and trying to keep all three updated so that I'd always got something wherever I went to say, yes, I can do that, or no, I can't. But that obviously became quite a difficult thing to achieve. So I just went back to using my calendar. And that's like my lifeline. It's my little Bible. I don't do anything without checking it first. And the fatigue, comes and goes. Like I said, when I'm stressed or tired, it seems to be worse, or if I've been particularly busy. However, the busier I am, even though I do get really tired, actually I feel better in myself. I feel more energetic. I'm not so lethargic. If I am busier, I just sleep a lot better and a lot longer at night, I think, and recover that way, rather than having to take days on the sofa like I did in the early days, where I'd sort of like walk up a flight of stairs and have to lay down at the top just because I didn't have the energy to get back down again. It's certainly improved no end. But sometimes I surprise myself with how good I am and, how good my memory is. And then it goes all to pot again for something else another day. So ups and downs, but mainly massively, massively improved. And I can cope with it. I can live alongside it quite well now.
Uh-huh. It's great to hear that you've improved so much, and also the sort of key thing there, I think, is you're finding out your own strategies for coping with it as well. Because I think from what we learnt last week, that there's perhaps not your body will help fix itself, and that does take time. But I don't think there's any sort of magic pills or anything like that that doctors can give you to just get over these things just like that. And there's still a lot of unknowns with regards to fatigue, especially, and memory issues that coming up with strategies is one of the key ways of moving forward, if you like.
Yeah, and I've said to many of the survivors in posts on the group and things that, just take the time to recover. Don't try and rush it. Don't have too many expectations of yourself, because if you expect too much from yourself, you're always going to be disappointed with how your recovery is going. And that goes for your memory and your fatigue as well. Look after yourself. Rest when your body's telling you to rest. There's no right or wrong way to recover. There's no, time on it. There's some days where I still think, this is a tough day. Thankfully, for the most part, I get on quite well every day. But, we've got to look after ourselves as well as learning new strategies to cope with our new, how our bodies are new and, experiencing life again, if you like. And it's a tough lesson to learn, but you do get there. And, and I didn't think that I knew my body quite as well as I do, but this has really taught me a lot about myself, physically and mentally. So, I know when I need a rest now, and today is one of those days.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your rest to chat with me.
Well, that's fine. I'm sat on the sofa in my pajamas, so...
So one of the points you were just talking about there, sort of, it reminds me of what Angela Hartley was saying in her talk, which was just after Charlotte. She probably had the hardest slot to follow after Charlotte, didn't she? And talking about exercise and getting back to recovery. One of her take homes was that you should sort of just go things in a steady manner and improve gradual, or try and up what you're doing in just tiny little increments. Don't stress your body. Your body has taken a lot out of it, the trauma that you've gone through, and it does take a long time to recover. So don't try and do silly things too quickly.
Yeah, or don't rush. Yeah, and and it's been a very, very gradual recovery physically for me. Definitely. I mean, there's no way. When I live in a 3-story house, so for me, 2 flights of stairs when I first got out of hospital was a massive, massive challenge. And it used to sort of take me 10 minutes to get up 2 flights of stairs, but now I can run up them both sets without even thinking about it. But that's, it's taken sort of 2.5, 3 years to get to that point. And I think the turning point on my physical recovery as well was when I started doing some exercise classes that I'd never dreamt I would ever do before my SCA, let alone afterwards. And just being a little bit more physical and actually finding an exercise class that I enjoy has been a massive turning point for me. And I have gained more strength physically because of those classes. And so I definitely recommend doing something when you're up to that point, because it takes a while for, everybody's at a different point. Even if you just go out for a 5-minute walk eventually, and that's all you can ever manage, then that's fine, as long as you're doing something, I think. And certainly the physical recover helps the emotional recovery as well.
Because you probably increased your social circle as well as doing the physical aspect of it. Because I believe you've taken up a couple of unusual type of physical activities, haven't you? Well, unusual from my point of view.
Yeah, they're unusual from my point of view as well. Whenever I sell it to anybody, they're like, "Oh my goodness me!" Yeah, so I took up a year ago Irish dancing classes. I'm still not very good, but we have entered a competition and I came 6th out of about 12, and they podiumed the first 5. So that was quite an amazing thing. And I also do a gymnastics class with other adults. And I never dreamt, I did gymnastics as a kid, and I never dreamt that I'd be able to do a forward roll or a handstand or a cartwheel or even a somersault or get on the beam or anything like that. And here I am sort of 10 months later, because I started that in sort of January time. I can do a handstand, and I'm not very good at them, but I can just about do them, and cartwheels, and I can do a forward roll, and I can do a somersault on like the air track, which is like a big long bouncy castle, which is brilliant fun. And it absolutely takes it out of me. By the end of the session, I'm a sweaty, achy mess, but the things that I get out of it physically are amazing, and I feel so much better having done these things. Learning the dance steps for the Irish dancing is quite a challenge. It's quite a tricky thing to learn anyway, because it's sort of, the fastest feet ever. So it takes me a little bit longer than the other girls or the other ladies to learn the steps, but I get there. And I don't practice when I'm at home, which I should, but I don't. And I get there eventually. But it's not about being perfect for me. It's just about the fun and, doing something that I've always wanted to do. So, yeah, it's brilliant.
It's a little unusual, but it probably works in ways that you don't realise, and that you're not only improving your physical self, but also your brain's having to think of new things to do, and it will be rebuilding new pathways, and helping your get over the injury that is sustained a couple of years ago. So it's a win-win, really.
And I think testing your brain is a good way to help it recover as well, because my brain might not ever get any better than it is now, but at least I've learned how to get around it and to cope with it. But learning the dance steps, I don't think is ever going to be easy.
I just got to add that you were showing some of your skills on Saturday night at the party, weren't you?
Oh God, yeah. But it's all about fun. Do you know what? I just wanted to let my hair down and let rip, and just go out and have fun, and that's exactly what I did. And I can be like that even if I haven't had a few glasses of prosecco. So, it's just I just want to go out and have fun and embrace where I've been for the last 3 years and how far I've come. So yeah, Saturday was all about that, and just letting my hair down and letting rip on the dance floor.
It was brilliant to see. And when you've been through all the sort of things that you've been through, it's great to see people are still able to do all of that, and all that stuff that you were talking about, the gymnastics, the rolling and the dancing. You've got an ICD, haven't you?
I have.
So
yeah.
Yeah,
and it's something, I do take that into consideration with some of the moves I do. The dancing is not a problem because your arms are by your side for the majority, but the gymnastics, it's certainly something that I'm well aware of. I wear a good sports bra because that really helps support the area where my ICD is, because the strap holds it quite tight against into my chest. I've not got to the point where I'm swinging around bars or anything like that, but I do have to be careful when I am using the bar apparatus so that I don't overstretch my arm until it's got a bit more muscle strength in it. So, but I suppose, and I like I said in my blog yesterday that I didn't think I'd ever be able to ignore my ICD, but I do for the most part. So I do sort of sometimes overdo it and forget that it's there, and then I've got aches the next day around the area. But I don't want to let that stop me doing things that I enjoy either. So yes, I'm careful most of the time, but occasionally I do forget about it, when I'm doing physical stuff. But again, that's not something, I'm lucky enough, touch wood, that my ICD hasn't had to do any work, apart from the odd bit of pacing when I have a few palpitations, but no shocks administered, which I'm thankful for, of course. And I can feel it. It's there. I know it's there. But I've learned, again, it's something I've learned to live with and for the most part ignore. So, definitely not something to stop you in your tracks, or you shouldn't let it stop you in your tracks. It's just a little device, and it's there doing its job whether you're busy or whether you're not.
Absolutely. No, it's great to hear that you said you didn't even sort of realise it's there some of the time, which is I'm getting that way as well. I don't really take much notice of it now. Occasionally, when have to lift something above my head or something like that, but very, very infrequently now. Which is sort of shows where we've gone or how far we've come, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's really strange because I suffer in both elbows with tennis elbow, and I'm undergoing physiotherapy for that at the minute, and it's that bothers me more than my ICD, and yet my ICD is a foreign body in my body, and that's not something that bothers me. My elbow's doing more than anything else. So yeah, it's something that you can learn to live with and sort of forget about for the most part. So
okay, just to sort of wrap up your journey, what would you about going to events? What would you say to anyone else thinking about attending an event? I mean, obviously, not a lot of loans just passed, but we're hoping that we can set up some coordinators across the country so that we can have more frequent small events. And what would you say to anyone who's thinking maybe I should attend one of those?
Well, for me, I found meeting and talking to other survivors enormously beneficial for my own recovery. It's given me hope and reassurance that things will and do get better in time. It is nerve-wracking the first time you go and meet people, but the benefits of meeting others who get it far outweigh anything else. Meeting others, like I said earlier, may not be for everyone, but I couldn't recommend it highly enough. I'm glad I took that first brave step to go to that first meeting, and I haven't looked back since. I've made some amazing friends during these meetups and events. And these friends, it's like I said in my blog, it's a different relationship with these new friends than it is of my other friends from before my SCA, because it's almost a comradeship of others who absolutely just understand where you're coming from, and I don't think I just wouldn't be the person I am today without having met other survivors. I think it's been vital in my recovery, and I know it has in one or two of the others who I've become friends with. I know that they've found it hugely beneficial as well, and it is that whole family feeling. It's you come away from these meetings, you hit the ground again. And not for a bad way. It sort of restores your faith in human nature a little bit, and it grounds you. It brings you back to earth and sort of brings you back to yourself, and to realise that life is worth living, and it's definitely worth making new friends and coming to these meetups, because it's just, like I said, without these new friendships, there's no way my recovery would have been what it is, because my family and my pre-SCA friends just don't get it from my point of view. And that's a lonely place to be. So the loneliness has gone for me completely now. And there's always somebody I can turn to away from the group, that from the support that I sometimes don't get from there. I can get it from the new friends that I've made. And I wouldn't be without it. It's just been amazing for me. I feel all emotional now.
And do you find that your interactions have changed coming to these meetings as you've progressed through your recovery over the years?
I do. In the early days, it was very much about finding me, knowing that I wasn't alone in my recovery, and that all these thoughts and feelings and twinges and things were all absolutely normal that I was experiencing. And now down the line, I can hopefully help and inspire newer survivors and their families, and just to reassure them that everything that they're going through and feeling is absolutely normal, and that in time things will improve, and in sort of 3 or 4 years' time they'll be looking back and going, I can go forward and help another person. And I suppose that's what helping out at events and things has done for me, is enabled me to give a little bit back, because I've had so much from the group and the interactions that I can now give a bit back, and hopefully inspire and help people along the way.
And I think you are indeed. Judging by the feedback on your post yesterday, you're definitely doing that. So well done to you. And thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on going to meetups for the last few years. They've been really enlightening and hopefully hopeful for other people thinking about going to a meetup as well. So thank you very much, Ingrid, and hopefully I'll speak to you soon.
No problem.